below. You can't see us. So, please raise your hands if you can't hear us. So,
lucky we're not up here.
well, I'm thinking about it. Do you want to try?
With our shoes off or
With
something?
our shoes on? Yeah. We'll see.
Shove it back against the book.
Yeah. I don't know, this works better with my skirt than with yours.
No, I like it. I like shoe-free too.
Oh, this is great. So should have gotten a pedicure.
That's okay, we can't see your toes.
Okay, they're sunk in here. Well, while Jenny is getting undressed.
This wasn't the romance writer.
Right.
Move it over a little so it's
The
back.
50 Shades of Belle.
Yeah, maybe
You
she's
just don't want it to tip over behind you when you get up there.
Yeah,
Yes,
there
there you go.
All right.
All right.
Oh, this is so great. And take a picture, please.
And our dear friend Sally Goldenbaum is in Colorado this morning, so I sent her a picture of this because she's actually got the center place on stage. So she was here after all. Gosh, we have so much to talk about, and I'll give you a little idea of what I think we're going to talk about. But I want to say that it's really special to me to have Jenny here. She and I have an unusual connection. The kind of gimmick is that we both started in the same month, but 30 years apart. That's when our first books came out. But our real connection is we share the same editor at Valentine, and the way she got to my editor is a story in and of itself. I also really want you to hear from Jenny because she's doing an extraordinary thing that I want to hear about too, which is this massive book tour she's on with her family, and I hope you'll introduce your family. And also, she has an extraordinary online presence, and had before she even was published, and has gone about it in a really graceful and nice way, I think. So, without any further ado, I'm going to ask Jenny to start at any place in that she wants to start, telling the story of how she got to this point, sitting on the back of the chair in the glamorous life of the published author. So,
Shoe-free and everything.
that's right.
No, it is pretty glamorous. I mean, look at this bookstore. This is the most beautiful. I don't know. How far are we from Kansas? I hope we can come from New Jersey frequently. This is a very emotional day for me. I'll try not to get too choked up, but the truth is that if it were not for Nancy Pickard, I would not be in this bookstore with my family on book tour. We are on a 7-month, 40,000-mile book tour. Wow. Kansas City is about the midway point, a little past the midway point. Without Nancy, I wouldn't have this book, not in this form anyway. And I've been telling this story also all across the country. I mean, so I can't tell it with Nancy here because there's all these references to her. Like, there's, for instance, the time when Nancy emailed me to say she liked my book, and I said, Nancy, I love you, and if we were having any more children, we would name them all Nancy. It always gets a lot of laughs, but I can't really tolerate Nancy.
Go ahead.
I'll make a very long story short because I do want to talk about the 30 years, and you are interested in the editing and how the publishing process has changed, and I'm fascinated in that too. But very briefly, Cover of Snow is my debut novel, but it's the 8th one I wrote. I could not find a publisher for it. I had agents all along. These were the numbers. I was represented by an agent for the first time in the year 2000. That first novel almost sold. It had 3 almost offers, and there was the day that my agent called me up and said, we're going to have an auction. And all those almost offers dissolved. So in a period of 11 years, I wrote 8 novels. I had 3 different agents. 5 of those novels were submitted, and we had 15 of those almost offers on those novels. And somewhere along the line, I read the majestic book, Scent of Rain and Lightning, which had done something that I was really aspiring to do with this 8th novel, which was to make the weather and the setting a force in the story. And I loved it so much that, you know, I just wrote Nancy to tell her. And I think at a certain point, I kind of lamely and pathetically and desperately said, do you ever read unpublished manuscript? And at first Nancy said she really didn't, quite reasonably, because I have these visions someday of me telling this story at a bookstore event, and the next day Nancy goes out to her front porch and there's just me. And in fact, we told this story in Politics and Prose with several of the international thriller writer debut authors. And I told the whole story, and then somebody raised their hand, and I was with 3 other authors, and somebody raised their hand and said, so do you feel like you know a secret now? Like, how do you do it? What's the secret to finally breaking in? And one of my co-authors raised his hand and he said, call Nancy Pickard. So no, that's not the secret, but the fact is that Nancy at a certain point was generous enough to say, you know, your story has clearly gone on so long, I'm afraid you're going to be suicidal if I don't do this. I'll read your manuscript. And she liked it, and she did give it to her editor. And miracle of miracle, I mean, the first miracle was Nancy liking it, and the second miracle was that her editor liked it, because as, you know, writers know, and probably readers know, you know, one book is not going to get the same perception from, you know, 30 readers are going to have 40 different opinions on it, but Nancy's editor liked it, and so 11 years and 5 days after starting to try to get published, I learned I would be a published author.
And now let me tell you what that story looked like from my point of view, because you may wonder why this novel, out of all the novels that maybe I've seen, why did I send this one to our editor, Linda Marrow, at Valentine? And I've been with Linda nearly 30 years. When you first contacted me, obviously it was lovely to get an email saying you liked my book. That immediately endeared her to me. That by itself is not enough to get me to do anything for her. At some point I asked you, I think, about your background, and she related to me in a little more detail because I asked for it. The story she has just told you, how many years, how close she got, and how often. And here was the message to me, as somebody who gets asked fairly frequently to read manuscripts and who always says no. What they said to me was that a lot of big-time editors at a lot of big-time houses had wanted to buy her book. Therefore, I was taking no chance in reading it. This wasn't going to be one of those awkward times when somebody was sending me the first draft of their first book, and I was somehow going to have to figure out a way to tell them it probably wasn't going to be published in this form. Because, you know, reading somebody's manuscript is a huge effort in time, in focus, in concentration, and you take a big emotional chance. And then the couple of times I have done it locally, well, I've probably done it more than a couple times, but a couple times that I'm reminded of, and I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I kind of wish I hadn't, because the news I had to give was more discouraging to the writer, I think, than encouraging, and I really hate that. So I had all these sort of, normally I have red flags going up, but Jenny had clearly worked so hard, and she hit a real soft spot in my heart. I have this soft spot for writers who have that exact same history. My dear friend, the mystery writer Susan Dunlap, is somebody who wrote 10 novels and that were all rejected before she was finally published with her next one. And those 10 novels, as far as I know, still sit in her closet. That is to me such evidence of hard work and of true commitment. How can you ignore that? But more than that was just the fact that so many editors had almost taken her. And so I just find that really heartbreaking. You have the record that I've ever heard of the number of close calls. And that's no record anybody wants, because it's just, you know how it is. You get so close and you think they're going to take you, and then at the last minute, one person may be in the publishing house after it's gone through the editor who wants to acquire you, and it's gone to her boss or his boss, and it's gone to the editorial committee, and the marketing department likes it, and then maybe one person in the top says, I don't know, I'm thinking not this book. Oh, it's just heartbreaking. So anyway, so what did I have to lose? So I read it, and I also thought, since she had liked Send Rain and Lightning, I thought maybe we had sort of the same sensitivity. Now, here came the other thing. This is the other reason I have to be so careful, and I was careful. My editor is also my friend. And my editor is, I'm not sure, she's vice president or something in addition to being an editor. She's a woman with twins who are just getting out of first grade. She's got enough to do. It's not a case where I say, well, listen, will you please read this, and if you don't like it, will you pass it on to some editor who will? No. I think I've sent 2 manuscripts from people I know to her. And one of them turned out disastrously because our darling editor, whom we adore, is not very good at saying no. And she just let it go and never gave a reply, which made me wish I'd never done it at all. But I just had a feeling, you know, everything was clicking. And I really thought Linda would like it, would love it, in fact. And she did. I mean, and that's, I just had this little intermediary sort of thing, but it was, I'm that part just below the tip of the iceberg. I'm right there, this little tiny level. And all of that is what you heard her say about all those years of how hard she worked. And the proof is here, and she, I don't think she knows this, but our editor, Linda, doesn't talk about her authors behind their backs unless she has good things to say. But she said that every time she'd offered criticism, and every time her assistant Dana, darling Dana, had offered criticism, that Jenny just was a sponge, just took it all in, immediately went back and started working on it, and just worked so hard and really proved herself to them. So I'm really proud of her, and I'm delighted to have had a little role in it. Now, by the way, it has been wonderfully received. She's had fabulous reviews.